Hi, Craig Lieberman here, technical advisor for the first Fast and Furious movies. Don't blame all of that on me. You're watching Vibe 105.5.
VIBEtalks, more than just music.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for Vibe 105 with a Vibe Talk segment where we're going to be doing something different today. We're going to be going into film and television, and we're going to go to one of the biggest film franchises in Hollywood today. My guest today, I'm happy to be joined by him. It's an honor to be joined by him. He worked as a technical advisor for the original Fast and the Furious film and Too Fast, Too Furious. He's Craig Lieberman. How you doing, Craig?
I am doing well. How are you? How's things up there in the great north?
It's doing great. Sun's shining, so it's no more winter. We're finally get to say we're kind of have the same weather as you over there, but it's not going to carry on too long. But going on to this, we brought you on here to talk about the Fast and the Furious. It's going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary this coming month, and you were involved from the start. Just talk to us a little bit of how you got involved with the franchise and what your role was.
Yeah, so I really got brought on because they found my car. I had a Toyota Supra, which was yellow at the time, and this older gentleman stopped by and talked to me at this car show. We struck up a rapport, and then a few days later, I got a phone call at my office. Now, at the time, I was working for Super Street Magazine's parent company, right? And I was running a drag race series called National Import Racing Association, which catered exclusively to Japanese tuner cars at the time. So he found the ad in one of the magazines, and he called me up blind, not really realizing that I was the same guy that he spoke to at a car show. And he said, "Hey, we're working on this little movie called Red Line, and we're looking for, cars that look like the one that is in your ad, which happened to be my yellow Supra." And I said, "Yeah, we can help you out. I'd love to have a discussion with you." So he invites me to a restaurant just down the street. It was in Beverly Hills where I was working. So I go to a nice restaurant with this guy. He puts a script on the table, a $100 bill, and says, "This is for your time. I want you to read it and tell me what you think." I said, "Okay." So we talked about a few things about cars and what it's going to be and all that sort of stuff. And I got on a plane, I read it, and I was laughing. It's like, this is terrible. This is so campy, so wrong, so inaccurate, so cheesy. I love it. I said, there's something here, though. There is something here, though. And so I got back. I called him up. He said, "Why don't you come up to your office and bring that Supra of yours?" I said, "Sure." So I pull into the Universal side lot, and this guy answers, very stoic looking guy, security guard guy. And he says, gets on the phone. "He's here." Like Charlie Brown's teacher in the cartoon. He goes, "Look, you pull over there and don't move." I thought I was in trouble. So I pulled over. Then I'm waiting there like 5 minutes. A security car comes by with a little siren on the top and all that cute little thing. Like, oh boy, I'm in studio jail. I don't know what's going on. They cordoned off the car with velvet ropes. He says, "Don't go anywhere. Just wait here." And then about 10 minutes later, the whole entourage comes down. Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, the director, the executive producer, Neil Moritz, Creighton Bellinge, all these people that I would learn who they were later on. But for that moment, I thought they were just going to lunch at the commissary, the restaurant, which was right next to where I was parked. So I started giving them the tour and all that kind of stuff. And I take Rob Cohen, the director, for a ride on Highway 101 in Universal City. If you've ever been to Universal Studios in Southern California, you know that freeway is pretty packed. But I found a gap. So I jumped on the gas. The target top was off, and Rob looks over, and the boost comes on, the turbo. Rob Cohen screams, "Is that the turbo?" And I'm like, "No." He goes, "Is that the sorry?" He says, "Is that the NOS?" I said, "No, that's the turbo." So we get back, and he jumps out of the car. "Okay, this is the car that we're putting this one in the movie." And I'm like, what just happened here? How did this happen? So they invite me upstairs, and we start talking about cars, and I put on my diplomatic face. I said, "Well, look, it's clear the script. You guys have done a lot of research, and you have a basic understanding of what's going on here. But the sequence of cars, what cars are you being used, and what roles could use some work?" And so, okay, you're hired as technical advisor, and that started a multi-year adventure.
And like looking back at that at the time, was there some pushback because the budget, I'm sure it's not like what it is now where they have hundreds of millions of dollars. At the time, it's just starting as a franchise. So when you're giving them different car options, was there some pushback of saying, okay, we can't afford that, we don't want to go with that car?
Absolutely. David Martyr, who was my boss, he was, I believe he was the official title was unit production manager. I'll have to look it up. But regardless, it was originally slated to be a $25 million picture. And then David Martyr and other people within his group went back to the studio executive and says, no way you're going to do this. Back in those days, a walk and talk motion picture where it's just people walking and talking and there's no real action was $40 million. Okay. And they were going to only give us 25. So David was able to get us $39 million. But it did rule some things out. I mean, when I sat there in the office with Rob Cohen and the entourage, I went up on the grease board and I wrote, this is the food chain of touring tuner cars. You have at the very top, the Nissan Skyline GTR, R34, R33, R32s, NSX, Acura NSX, Toyota Supra, Mitsubishi 3000 GT, VR4, FD3S, RX7, the 93 to 96 Mazda RX7. And then you go further down the line. This is where you want to be. But unfortunately, Skyline GTRs were not yet legal in the United States because of the 25-year rule. In Canada, you have a 15-year rule. But be that as it may, the R34 was still very new. It just came out in 99, and this conversation was taking place in 2000. And in 99, these cars were still about $60,000 MSRP. So it just didn't make sense. So even renting my Supra for 2 months that they used it cost them only 10 grand. But if they were to buy one, we knew how much they were going to pay because all those cars were about $18,000 to $20,000 at that time, US. So we acquired a total of 8 Supras, including mine. And I think the most expensive one was $24,000 and everything else was below that. So yeah, there was pushback. We had to work within the framework of the budget. So for the stunt cars that we buy, we'd go out and buy these stuff off of eBay. We were paying for Honda Civics. We're paying 10 grand, $12,000 for a relatively new Honda Civic. But yeah, there was pushback, so we had to be careful.
And like going back and you see yourself, like, what's a reaction when you know they're going to use your car to be the main car of the Fast and the Furious?
It really went over my head. It was like, okay, they're going to rent it for this movie, which at the time was called Red Line. Fast and Furious wasn't that phrase had never been put together except for a 1954 movie. So it didn't register to me. And that name didn't come up until right before the movie came out because they were still calling it Red Line for months after they had wrapped production. So, once I saw the movie, we got private screenings. The people who loaned our cars to Universal, when I say loaned, I mean rented these cars to Universal, they were kind enough to give us a pre-screening on Universal's back lot in a private theater. And I remember coming out of the movie theater, and I called my wife back. She said, well, what'd you think? I said, straight to DVD. This thing's going straight to DVD. It's because you're sure? And I said, actually, straight to VHS, because I don't think they're going to pay the extra to put it on DVD. Because really, it's just really cheesy and campy. And then she said something very smart. She said, well, you know how you watch yourself on home movies and you think to yourself, what a dork I was, right? You were there when they were filming it. There's no sound effects. There's no music to build the action. It's just like, go, run, tuck, 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 turn around the corner, cut. And I'm like, this is so cheesy. It's just so cheesy. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. It wasn't even close. It had a sellout weekend. It broke all kinds of records. It recovered all of his money that it had spent to make the movie in the first weekend. It was one of Universal's biggest release of the time. At one time, the DVD was the #1 selling DVD in history. It was crazy. Yeah. So they nailed it. Credit to Rob Cohen and those guys at the Vision.
And when you saw it for the first time and you see the lasting impact after, like, did you think to yourself, as you're hearing about this, all the sales, like, could this be more than just one sequel, or did you think it was going to be a one-off at the time?
That's a good question. The first time I actually saw it, the finished movie was in a movie theater with everybody. Well, that's not true. I saw it at the world premiere because I got invited to the premiere mainly because they needed my car there, so I got tickets to go in. So, and then I saw a cast and crew screening a couple of months before that where the music wasn't locked yet. There were still time codes and all that. But the first time I saw the finished product was in a movie theater with everybody else on opening night. The scene when the Honda Civics go underneath the tractor trailer and all that, and then they take off. The whole audience, standing ovation and cheered. And I looked behind me. I was like in the third row. And I looked behind me and people were just lit. And I said, they've got something here. They've got something. In fact, the director, Rob Cohen, called the executive producer, Neil Moritz, and he goes, we have a cult classic on our hands. And he was right. Yeah. So as for the sequel, I was still doing promotion for Universal. I traveled with Paul Walker to promote the movie after it came out. Paul was really an unknown person at the time. I remember having autograph lines for him, and people were questioning, who is this person? Why are we waiting here? They didn't know who he was. And today he'd be a gajillionaire superstar, but be that as it may. And then by the time I was done wrapping up all the promotion and then the DVD home theater promotion stuff for the DVD coming out, I had been off the payroll for maybe a month. And then I get a phone call again from David Marty. He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm working. What are you doing? So they're like, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm sitting at home right now. He goes, you need to get up here. We're going to make another one. Make another what?
Wow.
Going to make another movie? He says, yeah. And I said, what are you going to call it? The Slow and the Spurious? He says, no, we're going to call it Too Fast. Is that TOO? He says, no, two, whatever, just get up here. So at that time I was driving an R34 Skyline GTR, which I had bought to replace my Supra. And so kind of the same deal. John Singleton was the director at the time. He came from films like Boys in the Hood, which I watched, which was a fantastic movie. And Baby Boy, which is another good one, which I really liked. As far as urban movies go, they were almost as good as Friday. Remember the Friday series?
Yeah, love those
movies too. And, so I get up there. They have another office now in not Santa Monica, but Marina Del Rey right there. So I get up there and I get in there with John Singleton, and we have a little discussion. And I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? He said, there's a meeting at Universal. I need you to be there. I said, okay. So I go to Universal. You got to remember, I'm John Nobody. I'm nobody. I'm just a dude who has a couple of cool cars. That's it. That's my sole qualification. And maybe 30 years playing around with cars, Japanese cars. So I get invited into this meeting. Come in, it's a giant boardroom. There's this table, there's one of those conference tables like you saw in A Hunt for Red October. So Scott Stuber is the VP of the studio. He's sitting at one head. 2 seats down from me is John Singleton. Right next to me is, on one side is Ted Mosier, picture car boss, and then my boss, David Martin. So this lady across the way, sitting across from me, her name is Melissa Kroll. I'll never forget her. She says, okay, listen, we have this fabulous arrangement with Mitsubishi, okay? And we are going to get, or with Dodge, and we are going to get a Dodge Neon SRT4 as the main car. It's not even out yet. It's not even out. It's going to be Paul Walker's main car. And I'm writhing in my seat. Dodge Neon. I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in America, a Neon is a rental car. It's a throwaway, disposable rental car. It's basic transportation. It's like a toaster with no microwave. Okay? You know? One of those. It's not even a toaster oven, just a toaster. It's a basic appliance. And Singleton sees me out of the corner of his eye, and he leans over to me and goes, Lieberman, you got something to say? And I said, no, sir. I'll wait my time. And he goes, no, I want to know. If you got something to say, speak up. This is what we're paying you for. I said, well, sir, in my honest opinion, I think you could put lipstick on a pig, but it's still it's still a pig, essentially. And then he looks at me and goes, I don't want no booty ass S word in my movie. If it's booty, I need to know right now. I said, well, I don't care how many nitrous bottles you stuff into that car. There's going to be a whole segment of the audience that says this is repulsive to me, because it's just not a car that anybody aspires to own. Nobody puts a poster of a Dodge Neon on their wall saying, someday that's going to be mine. And so that was the end of that discussion. So she basically said, should we, toss away a multi-million-dollar co-marketing deal? I said, that's not what I said. There are other cars we can put in there where they have a Mitsubishi Eclipse, and we can get a Mitsubishi Evo. And they're like, what's an Evo? So we don't have it here yet. We have something called the Lancer, but we don't have that here yet. So they made a deal, and that's how Paul Walker's other car became the Mitsubishi Evo. So that, I think, is one of my major contributions to the Fast and Furious franchise, because as bad as it was, it could have been worse.
Well, thankfully, you gave John Singleton, you told him what you were thinking about that car. And looking at like your technical advisor role from the first to second movie, in Too Fast, Too Furious, what was the day-to-day like at that time compared to the original film?
Oh, the day-to-day was great. So we had this beautiful, magnificent picture car warehouse. It was about 40,000 square feet, but it was in Hialeah, Florida. I don't know if you know where Hialeah is. It looks like it's close to Miami on the map. It's really probably closer to Trinidad and Tobago in makeup. That town was a rough town, man. It had a lot of recent immigrants right there. It was a depressed area. It was a tough town. But the picture car warehouse and the locals we worked with there were absolutely phenomenal. So it was luxurious by everything else. They put in lifts, so they're working on the cars. And at this movie, they had over 200 cars. At one point, we had more police cars than the city of Miami, and I'm not joking.
Wow.
So we had to, because we were trying to work on a budget still, we were $7 million, I think, for that picture car budget because of the car count predominantly and the transportation to get a lot of the cars from California to Florida. So the cars started being rebuilt for Too Fast, Too Furious in California, where we had the first picture car warehouse, which was very modest. I think it was maybe 2,000, 3,000 square feet. So we took a lot of those cars and reconditioned them. We changed the paint, we changed the body kits, we changed the wheels, we changed the wings, we changed the graphics, and we changed the interiors. And then we moved them all down to Florida, and we finished them out because the art department had to figure out what graphics were going to go on the car. So a big part of my job was making sure that all the sponsors who were providing complementary products or parts at cost got the right size decal placement, and as many decals we could put that weren't too conspicuous for being just kind of pasting stuff here and there. So there was always that battle to make them a certain size, because product placement is a big thing for movies. It cost these companies a lot of money to have their logo seen on screen. And Universal, to their credit, they were bypassing a lot of these rules. Instead of going down line by line for each one of these small companies to ask them for $80,000 or whatever the fee might be, they were doing it for a product in kind exchange. So we'll give you products either at cost or free as long as we get decals and that kind of stuff. And so if you see T-shirts or banners in the garages and that kind of stuff, it's because we're trying to do more to give the sponsors exposure, which is a big part of my job. The other part of it was calling up these companies and saying, we need some products. We need, you're going to get exposure. It was a lot easier with Too Fast, Too Furious, because in the first movie, I was calling up begging and pleading for parts, but it was an unknown entity at that time. Yeah. So because of the relationships I had through my day job, Naira, I knew all the marketing people. So they trusted that I was going to have their best interests at heart. And again, to Universal's credit, David Martyr and the people who worked in the picture car crew, they did a lot of extra work, especially the mechanics who had to put on all these parts that really had no place being in a stunt car, since they will never be used. Why are we putting nitrous bottles in stunt cars where the bottle will actually never be used, right? Yeah. So these guys went through hell. So my job was to make sure that all the parts got used, make sure that the decals were on the car, gave advice to the equipment, the kind of equipment that we're going to put on the car to make it cool. Like there in Too Fast, Too Furious, there was a Supra, that had been reconditioned from their first movie. At least one or two of them were. The other ones we bought and start from scratch. But I wanted to see the engine because Gretty, which was a big tuner that you might know of, is here right here in Irvine. Most of those companies that gave parts were gave parts within 20 miles of my house. I know these guys. I still hang out with these people today. And I called up my friend over at Gretty, Charles Shepard at the time, and he worked with the head cheeses over there, and said, okay, we're going to build this big fancy motor for your Toyota Supra. And we're going to show the turbo and the polish this and the shiny that. And it was such a shame to close the hood that we came up with the design to do a clear hood. And I brought the design to Eddie Paul, who helped us build the first picture cars. He wrote a book about it, actually. And he made it a vacuum formed Lexan, right, to get that clear hood. Now, since all the replica cars, the stunt cars and the backup cars did not have the fancy movie, he came up with the idea with taking a high-res picture of the engine and then mounting it to a plate underneath the clear glass. So when you look at all the other cars, you can't tell that that's not actually the engine under there. It's so realistic that I couldn't tell when I walked by the cars. I could not tell which one had the real engine in it. Wow. So these guys are geniuses, and the mechanics who put all this together, unbelievable. So watching that procedure and how all that stuff went down and making sure that all the parts were in the right place and what was authentic-ish, got to remember, it's not a documentary. Listen, who are we kidding? These are popcorn movies. So just watching this process take place, it was great. It was a little frustrating too. The guy who was the art director, brilliant art director named by the name of Keith Brian Birds. You look at his resume at IMDb, and these guys got a wonderful, wonderful resume. However, he didn't like cars. He didn't care about cars. He probably owned a Prius. A car was nothing more than an appliance to him. So for him to look at these graphics and say, this is what we want to have on the car, I envisioned initially cars that were devoid of graphics or something way more JDM looking, inspired by the JDM tuners libraries in Japan, right? That's not what I got. So for the Supra, they put an Afro pick on the side. Okay. The character of the driving the car was African-American. They put an Afro pick on the side of the car. I have to wonder how that would play today.
Yeah, not very good.
I don't think it aged well. I think some people, but I was objecting to it, not on that basis at all. I mean, that's just what the color combination was the thing for him. But I thought we could do something more like the Top Secret Tuner Company, the Top Secret in Japan. If you ever look at some of their cars, that's what I was going for. The NSX, we had these beautiful NSXs. I showed them these wonderful pictures of JGTC NSXs with these modest hood scoop, roof scoop that go into the back because the engine's in the back of that thing, right? And then it's a mid-engine car. Nope, they came up with some kind of clamshell snorkel thing that was horrible. And then to make it worse, they did it in the Louis Vuitton library. They made it look like a handbag. So there were frustrations, but as my wife used to say, your job is technical advisor. You give advice, okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a great experience. The people treated me very, very well there. And the people that I watched work were just consummate professionals. To watch them do what they do every day, and the genius, the propane flamethrower exhaust. I mean, there's just so much that went on.
Yeah, and going on to Fast and the Furious before that, if you were to see car culture at the time, how would you best describe that compared to after the movie? What did car culture become after it?
Well, one thing I've learned about working on movies is that if a human sees something on a screen, then they're going to want to copy it. The cars were taken from most of the background cars that you saw in the first couple of movies were legitimately actual real people's cars. So while they were set decoration, we called them background cars technically. But the way that was listed on the script or the call sheets, it would say MD Rice Rocket, which means nondescript Rice Rocket. So Hollywood's picture car world, the old white guys that run that, the guys who are like the Camaros and Chevy pick-em-up trucks and all that kind of stuff, they call those cars Rice Rockets, which of course is not politically correct, but that's a whole other discussion. But all these background cars that you saw were, authentic because these are the same cars you'd see on a car show on a Saturday night. So as what happened with the cars in the movie, a lot of that carried over, especially in Too Fast, Too Furious. You could see there was a little bit of neon in the first movie, where you saw some of the neon light, but in the second movie, everything had neon. Everything had neon in every car, inside and out. That was the deal. The fire coming out of the exhaust was all my fault. And let me tell you why. I showed them options videos. Options videos are videos that cover racing in Japan, like what was JJTC back then, or what is Super GT now. You see when these cars downshift or they come off the gas, you get that run on, that flame that shoots out of the exhaust. So they said, we have to have that in the cars. I said, I don't think you understand how this works. It works in between shifts, right? It loads up. There's no catalytic converter. No. We're not going to do it that way. So they did that in the first movie, right? They were shooting fire out the cars. To do that, they took propane tanks, filled them up with special chemicals, and then they used something we used in racing for ignition systems. It was called an MSD 6AL box and an MSD coil. And so they run a spark plug into the muffler, where the muffler ends here, and then there's a piece of pipe that goes here to the tip. Right in that piece of pipe, they put the spark plug in there, and then the driver controls all that ignition source by pressing a button on the steering wheel or somewhere on the dash, and it sparks this unburnt fuel that's coming from their propane tank, and it shoots out fire. And so the fire is colored by the chemicals that they put in there.
Wow.
And so everybody wanted to do that. So that really influenced the thing. Big wings went off the hook. Everybody was putting big wings on slow cars, which was funny. You're putting a wing that's, $500. That's 24 inches tall off the back of your trunk on your Honda Civic that makes 92 horsepower. You're probably not going to need it, but okay.
And then, did you see people even replicating some of the graphics on the cars, or was it just it doesn't fit, it doesn't suit it? Where do they go from there?
Okay, great question. RJ DeVera, my co-technical consultant, who worked more on the culture side and the wardrobe side and connection side, when we saw the graphics that they were putting on the cars, I think he said something to RJ like, these things are horrible. And he goes, yeah, well, nobody's going to be copying, that's for sure. And here we are. 20 years later, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of Mitsubishi replicas all over the world. All over the world. There's at least 50, and I've lost count. Jettas. Pretty much every car has been replicated, dozens of times, except the really expensive ones. The Supra would be hard to replicate. There's a handful around the world, maybe certainly less than a dozen. The Skyline GTR, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 that are around the world. All these people reach out to me for ask me questions about graphics or whatever else. So I have a pretty good idea of what's where. But, the Eclipse was very copied. Even people are putting those stickers on other cars. They'll go buy a Hyundai Sonata and they'll stick a Mitsubishi graphic, the Eclipse graphic on the side of the car, which to me is offensive. It's just like it doesn't belong there. I feel like it's a little out of place, doesn't quite fit. It just kind of, it makes my brain malfunction. I'm like, what are we doing here? What is the purpose of this? But you have to take it for what it is. It's a tribute to the franchise that they love, and they feel that they're living the fast lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. So you can't fault them for the enthusiasm, but still a little peculiar to my old brain. I wonder how I would have felt if I were 21 and I saw that. Don't know.
Yeah, this culture, it's kind of taken a life of its own, this movie. Like, going into, let's say, what you're doing now, you go to the car show scene and you just see some of the cars pull up. Do you see anybody really try to replicate more an original Fast and Furious car, even if they don't have it? Like, try to their best to put the neon lights around it and the NOS on the back?
We have I travel with a very fun group of people here in Southern California. We were blessed. This is arguably the car culture capital of the world, because the crap we do, we force upon other people around the world. So it's not good. Mostly it's really good. We have a guy here, a good friend of mine, Shahar. He's got several. He's got a green Eclipse, which is pretty on point. He has a red RX-7 from the first movie, replica on point. He has a purple Eclipse from the Too Fast, Too Furious genre. It's pretty good. And a Ford Lightning, which was easy to replica. Then I've got my buddy Kevin Peacock and so forth and so. There's a whole bunch of people. There's a guy up in Canada. You have to look him up on Instagram, Jorge AS30. And he is in, I believe, Manitoba. And he's got 30 different cars. Some are actual screen used cars, but he's built replicas of every decent movie car. Now, when I say replicas, I mean cosmetic replicas on the outside. I don't think most of them have the equipment that was in the movie. But to be fair, only the cars in Fast and Furious 1 and Fast and Furious 2 had interior modifications, because the rest of the cars were pretty much built from the start as dual-purpose cars. Maybe a shiny car, but it's going to get turned into a stunt car. So you don't need to have TVs and VCRs and DVD players and Dodge Chargers like you'd see in Fast 6 or 7, because it's just not necessary. It's not part of the story. So the early movie cars are very special. The first two the cars from the first two movies, those are the ones that are collectible, because they were real cars owned by real people, and they were pretty modified before they went to Universal.
With Craig Lieberman here on Vibe 105, Vibe Talks segment. And Craig, going back to the first Fast and Furious, this all started with getting a truck, trying to steal some DVD players. Now when you go past Fast 5, it's taken a different route. What is your opinion on the direction of the Fast saga?
Okay, well, this is a touchy subject for a lot of people. I get this probably 300 times a week. When are they going back to street racing movies? And my simple answer is this. First off, street racing movies don't make money. If you take a look at the lowest grossing films of the franchise, those were all films that focused on predominantly street racing. Arguably, you could say that the Fast franchise is way more popular now, so if you were to introduce a racing movie now, it would do better. But let's think about this. The only thing more boring than racing an 18-second Honda Civic is watching an 18-second Honda Civic race the quarter mile. How do you make a story out of that for 2 hours? Yeah, secondly, you can see all that content for free. You want to see illegal street racing? You can tune into any number of YouTube channels and watch it for free. 1320 Video is a great one. They have all kinds of illegal street racing going on all the time. And you can watch it for free, and it's all legit, and it's all real, and it's fantastic programming. It's completely illegal to street race, of course, but it's still fantastic stuff. So while that's interesting, it doesn't sustain the franchise, right? With merchandising, with branding, and all that other stuff. Universal had done the research, and by the time they got to Fast 5, it was actually an interview that Vin Diesel did, I think in 2009, where he said, we have to transition from this street racing thing to heist films. Heist films are internationally recognizable. It doesn't matter where you present a heist film. If somebody's trying to get something, every culture on the planet knows about that. I don't care if you're Eskimos. I don't care if you're Chinese. I don't care if you're American. Even we get it. It's a heist is a big thing. So they went down that route. But Vin also said, I believe it was in the same interview, he said we were going to try, or he was going to try to put some element of street racing in every movie to keep that heritage alive, because that's where they came from. So to his credit, he's done that, but people still want to see the Japanese turbo cars. They want to see Supras and RX-7s and all that. And I get it, because these people are purists, but what would you rather see? You know, a $100,000 Supra, because that's what they're going for today, or a $3.4 million Lykan hypercar, or Koenigsegg Agera RS. I mean, I love Supras. Don't get me wrong. I love RX-7s and all the JDM cars, but I'll tell you, I'm going to be a little bit more aroused by a $2 million car on set. It's just me. Maybe I'm matured, or maybe I haven't. But, you know, I get what they're trying to do. And you take a look at how much money the movies are making now. First movie made $211 million for a cost of $40 million, $39 million. Fast 7 made $1.5 billion. Yeah. Now, if you're a shareholder in that company, because remember, they are publicly traded on the stock exchange, which profit margin would you want? The profit margin from Fast and Furious 1 or the profit margin from Fast and Furious 7? Universal, NBC Universal is a company, a for-profit company, okay? It's their job to make money for their shareholders. And if people keep going to the movies, they're thinking they're doing the right thing. And if the box office results keep going up higher, they're thinking they're going in the right direction. And they are. It's hard to argue with them.
Yeah. And like, even going on to that, like this new movie that's coming out, Fast 9, it's getting a lot of buzz online. Everyone sees the car scenes, everything they're doing. So someone, let's say, who is not a part of the car community like yourself, they're seeing it. Wow, that looks cool. That looks amazing. The NOS comes out. It's able to push this car all over the place. And someone who's in the car community like yourself, what are your thoughts when you see stuff like that?
Okay, it's like a James Bond movie, man. One of the first movies I ever saw in a movie theater was Moonraker. Remember that? James Bond, yeah. Probably looking back, probably one of the worst movies of the franchise. You know, but the lasers and the space shuttle and all that kind of stuff, I was barely a teenager, I think, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And now as I'm older and I go back and watch the movies, the old ones, you know, from the 1960s look really campy to me, really cheesy and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, you go in there, you have to have a suspension of disbelief, right? You just have to suspend. I have a whole thing just, but I'm going to be politically correct. Physics, kind of a big deal for me. I'm a World War II historian, and it's very hard for me to find a World War II movie that doesn't make me want to throw up, because the physics are all wrong. What was I'm a Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck? Turd. Midway? Turd. The only decent war movie was Tora, and that's all another story. So when I walk into a Fast and Furious movie right now, I know that torpedoes do not travel on top of ice, you know, because that they have these two little things in the back, you know, that called rudders that steer it. So how do you steer a torpedo that's out of the water? Still trying to figure out that one. When did the Dominic Toretto family go to commando school to learn how to jump from 30,000 feet? When did they get special weapons training? Did I miss that movie? What was that, 5 or 6? I missed that movie. Okay, what's going on there? How come people die but they never die? Okay, Han's back. Okay, we're going to move the sequence of movies about. But what about the phones in Tokyo Drift? And if this movie's supposed to be after this movie, how do they have those phones back then? There's all kinds of continuity issues and all that kind of stuff. But you just got to go in there and just say, you know what? I don't care. I just want to see my family. It's like the family reunions, right? If you're Italian, right? You're Italian, you go to the barbecue on a Saturday. You got the whole family come out. They got Tony, Matty, Vinny, Bobby, Paulie. They're all there, right? Right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. There's always that one uncle you don't want to see, but you go because everybody else is there that you want to see, right? So you listen to the stories and all that kind of. It's just like the Fast and Furious movies. You go there because now we are so acclimated to the cast. They become extensions of our own personal family. These are our ambassadors in the car community. Everybody loves Han. Everybody loves Vin. Everybody loves Roman. Everybody loves these people because they're car people. No matter what, they're always driving cool cars and they speak our language for the most part. So they are idols to us. So the stories are ridiculous, the super spies and all that stuff, and even the great actors that have run through that franchise. Helen Mirren, Jason Statham, one of my favorite action actors ever. The Rock. I mean, there's some great people. Gal Gadot. I mean, you got some stunning people who want to be in the movie now. It's not like they're looking to go, no, I get a phone call. I'm going to try to find an excuse to get out. They want to be in the movie now. That says a lot. There is no other franchise that has done what Fast and Furious does. And you can argue all day long that these aren't car movies. Really? You know how many cars they've blown up? I think there are over 1,000 cars right now. Literally over 1,000 cars that have been destroyed. Literally. I think they did 300 plus just in, I think it was Fat. What's the one with pushing them off the building? Was that 7? 8? 8? Yeah. So
it's been Furious 7.
So they killed a whole bunch of cars. So it's still a car movie. It's just the people are crying because they don't see a wide body FD RX-7 with twin turbos and spitting fire at the starting line and all that kind of stuff. So people are being a little bit critical.
And take us through what's it like at some of those screenings, like when they're doing the test screening with maybe the cast and crew. Because a lot of people are bringing up, they're bringing back Han. Sung Kang's character is very popular. So is that when they're making those decisions and those test screenings with the cast and crew to decide what to do in the future installments of the franchise?
They certainly do a lot of surveys. In fact, the survey that I heard about Sung Kang was that when they survey audiences on who has a favorable rating of this character, you always get a character that would score in the 90s. There's at least one or two. Mostly, Vin Diesel will get, I don't know what it created. Let's say 95. Paul Walker would get 92, 90, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. It's just a number. Sung Kang was the only one that got 100.
Wow.
Surveyed audience got 100%. Not one person said in their surveys, I don't like Han. So then Han said, Universal said, we've got to bring him back. And so there you got the thing. Tokyo Drift was before this movie, not after, but now I can switch it around, and he's not dead yet. So we're going to bring him back. So there's that.
Wow. That's great.
And then they learned a lot. They learned that the Latino culture is very important to the success of Fast and Furious. The Latino culture, and I can say this from the get-go, I grew up in Southern California. I've traveled the world. I've been to many car shows. I look at my Instagram fans. I look at the audience and my YouTube statistics, and I can tell you that by far the Latino group all around the world is the most fanatical audience for this franchise and this segment. It's just amazing. It's fascinating. And
what's your personal favorite Fast and the Furious? Do you prefer the original, or have you suspended disbelief? 8-speed transmissions, 32 downshifts, all blah, 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 blah. Tokyo Drift is my favorite. Do you know why? Because it's supposedly set in Tokyo, and they made a pretty good job making it look like we actually filmed in Tokyo, even though 95% of it was filmed in California. So they did a great job. Pretty girls, the makeup of the time, because if you were in the JDM culture back then, that was really the pinnacle of JDM culture. The umbrella girls who wear these scantily clad outfits, if they're not in branded apparel like Falcon tires, for example. The Falcon tires umbrella girls were always on point, Toyo and all that kind of stuff. So all those girls were in this movie. And even a lot of our local import models. Kyla Yu, one of the ladies I'm going to interview actually tomorrow, an import model. She was the girl who goes, ready. And then the other girl, Ayuko Tanaka, goes, seto. And then she goes, go. So that was my favorite. The cars, the girls, set in Japan. It was more authentic. It felt more authentic to me. So that's my favorite. All the other ones, Fast and Furious 1, nostalgia reasons, but I can't watch it because I'm in it for 10 seconds and I'll just fast forward it. I can't watch myself. Is that the racehorse scene that you're in?
Oh God, that's a whole other story. Do I have time for that story?
Yeah, I got time. You got plenty of time.
So if you've ever seen the race wars scene in Fast and Furious, you're going to notice there's a scene where this rather dorky looking guy comes up to start the races, and he puts his two fingers up in the air and he waves his fingers and he drops his hands and the two cars set off. Looks really accurate if you don't know anything about how street races are started, but here's how that happened. So at the time they were filming over the Johnny Tran incident where they were fighting at the parachute because under that parachute canopy. movies are not filmed in chronological order, as it turns out. They don't film scene one on day one. Scene one could be filmed on the last day of the shoot. Anyway, be that as it may. So they're shooting over there. My job was to keep the cars running every 15 seconds, send 2 cars down the track so that they have consistent background action going on. That was the whole deal. The problem was we had a lot of these gorgeous young ladies, kids. They were like 19, 20 years old, if that, 25 maybe. And at the time I was in my early 30s, so they were all like teenagers. It was weird, but they're all dressed in those like little, what do you call them, like Catholic high school girl outfits or whatever, very suggestive clothing. And the drivers, who were about the same age, were obviously attracted to these young ladies, right? So I could not keep them looking at me, right, to get them running down the track. And so Rob Cohen comes over and says, you got to keep them moving. You got to keep them moving. You got to keep them moving. And I said, okay, I'll try and keep them moving. So there's a break after that, and then they bring some cars over here, and they're going to do which race they were doing. I think they were doing Letty versus the white RX-7. So they line the camera up over here because they're ready for her shot, and they pull up the 240SX and they pull up the white RX-7, and then speed. Camera got speed, rolling, action, and I go like this, cut. I just drop my hands like I normally do. I just got them up and cut. That's it. He comes over and says, you can't do that. I said, can't do what? He said, you can't just drop your fingers. You said, start a street race. He goes, well, how do you normally start a street race? You go like this. You just put your hands up, or if you have a flashlight, you put your hands up and you go. That's it. No, we need to build up some drama. So what do you mean? Did you ever see Top Gun? I said, of course. I am a male, right? I grew up in the 80s. I have seen Top Gun. Do you want me to recite one? No, it's not what we're here for. He says, you remember the part in the front on the aircraft carrier at the front of the movie where the guy does this to rev up the engine? He goes, that kind of thing. I said, yeah. He says, I want you to do that. Rob, I can't do that. Why not? I said, because my friends are going to watch this. I said, you don't understand. We have to build up the excitement. I was like, oh God. So, shit. So I'm like, how am I going to do this? And I'm really thinking about just having somebody else come over and do that part. Because I have a great face for radio. I have no aspirations to be an actor. So he goes off and does something else. And I get the call on the radio again. You got to keep the cars going. You got to keep the cars going. And Rob's standing about 50 feet away. And so I'm looking at 2 of my friends now are pulled up. And I'm like, dude, look at me. Dude, look at me. Are you ready? Are you ready? Go. And Rob goes, cut. He comes over again. I said, well, no, that's it. That's what you're going to do right then. But when you put your fingers up, I want you to make them rev up their engine. As I said, oh my God, what did I just get myself into? For years, every time I'd go on a little cruise with my buddies, we'd pull up next to each other and stop wide, and they'd look at me and they'd go like that. It was a joke that would never die.
Wow.
So that's a little useless piece of information, behind the scenes stuff that they don't say, that they don't show in the behind the scenes segment on the DVD.
And a couple final questions here with Craig Lieberman, original technical advisor of the first 2 Fast and the Furious films. Craig, just even going on to, you have your YouTube channel now. You started that where it gives fans of the franchise a behind the scenes look. What made you want to start a YouTube channel and just after all these years bring some of this knowledge out to light?
Well, it came from the fact that I found a bunch of videotapes, about 7 hours of footage that I recorded on at the picture car warehouse as I was building the cars. I really wanted to chronicle the build of my Supra. You know, I get so many questions. How did your Supra wind up in the movie? How did your Maxima wind up in the movie? How did your R34 wind up in the movie, the GTR that Paul drove in Too Fast, Too Furious? And that started it. And then I got such an overwhelming response from that. I said, there's probably more here because I know the story of how every car was built because I was literally there ordering the parts and watching it all come together, picking the colors or suggesting graphics and all that stuff. And it just kind of took off. And I said, well, this could be something. And then I learned that you could monetize it. You know, you click a button on YouTube and they will share the ad revenue with you. And before you knew it, it started to become like real money. And my wife said, you should just keep doing this. I mean, you're going to talk about it anyway. Why not get paid for it? I said, all right, so you have video cameras, you have lights, you know how to do stuff. I've done other video stuff, so why don't you just do it? but the response has been really good. The book that I wrote, I did it without pictures because I didn't want people to have to pay $40 for a picture book. So I just started the Instagram to give away all the pictures for free so people could see that. And that worked out pretty well. Got a lot of people subscribing or following or whatever. And so I still do that and tell stories. But my YouTube channel is my primary medium right now. It's doing really well. It gives me opportunity to answer a lot of questions from people. I do a lot of Instagram lives from the core people who have been following me for a long time, and new people. So it's good. Everybody's getting the information, and I hate seeing people regurgitate false information.
Yeah.
So.
And, this is the 20th anniversary of the franchise. And I'm sure a lot of people have this kind of question come up, especially with Paul Walker being such a big part of the franchise. What was your favorite memory of Paul Walker?
Probably Too Fast, Too Furious. I hadn't seen Paul. Paul and I traveled a little bit together when we were promoting the first movie. So we went to a couple of cities. I met his daughter when she was a toddler. And then Too Fast, Too Furious, I hadn't seen him for months. And then on Too Fast, Too Furious, I get down to Florida to work on the picture. And I see Paul standing over by the car area where we're staging cars for a scene that night. And I walked up, he goes, "Hey, bro, what's going on?" Shook my hand, he recognized me. Like, I'm nobody. I'm just a technical advisor who had a car. And I hadn't seen him since the premiere, actually, is the last time I saw him. And I said, "You're back again?" He says, "Yep, they keep thinking I'm an actor and I'm going to keep taking their money." He didn't think of himself as an actor. He's just a car guy. And getting to talking to him when I traveled with him, he said, if they want to put me in movies, as long as the movies have cars, guns, or surfing, I'm pretty much going to say yes. So he was just a down to earth guy, and he was a great ambassador for the car hobby. So many people want to be Paul Walker, want to be that kind of cool, laid back, chill kind of dude. Just to have a love of cars, all cars. It's not just one thing, like BMWs, Mustangs, old Chevys, JDM cars, Supras, R34s, and so forth. In fact, today, in about 2 hours, the guy who bought Paul Walker's actual personal R34 GTR is loaning it to me for a couple of months. So it's being delivered to my house here in about 2 hours.
That's awesome. So
I'll be the caretaker of that for a while.
That's amazing.
I'd be afraid to drive it.
And I guess final question here. I looked on your Instagram, follow it. I see some of the videos you put up, like that recap of the trailer of Fast 9, like we were talking about. Are you going to be doing a recap of Fast 9 after you actually see it?
Oh, yeah. Look, this is what I say to people all the time. You ever watch Star Trek or Star Wars? There's no air in space. Spacecraft do not need to bank to do an aileron roll into a trench. Why would they go on the horizontal axis in order to shoot torpedoes into a vent port? Why wouldn't they just shoot it from a guided missile right through? They've got the technology to go light speed. They don't have a guided missile to go in a port from the side out. The physics just. But like I said, you just got to walk in the theater like you've got an IQ of 50 and just enjoy it. It's good fun.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Craig, how can we follow you on social media and anything else you want to promote? Floor is yours.
Sure. Just go on to YouTube under the name Craig Lieberman, Lieberman, or go on to Craig Lieberman _42. That's the number of cars I had when I created that account. I'm now beyond that, unfortunately. I have a sickness.
That's great. Well, Craig, I'd like to thank you again for sharing your time and coming on Vibe 105 to talk about this. You were there from the start, and now it's great to hear some of these stories there, especially today with this franchise still up and running, and I wish you all the best. Thanks,
Giancarlo. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks a lot. That was Craig Lieberman, the technical advisor of the first two Fast and the Furious movies. Stick around because we've got plenty more programming right here on Vibe 105.